Ah, it seems I can't get enough of Branded. So yeah, as I promised, I made a deck guide for Branded, and it turned out to be a pretty big video. And I made a lot of combos, and I actually decided to make chapters so you can see and skip to every point you like. Yeah, let's go over the chapters. I decided to talk about the general deck stats at the first chapter. Then in the second chapter, I'm talking about the matchups, like how Branded is positioned in the Genesis meta, and what are good matchups, what are bad matchups. Then in the third bullet point, the third chapter, I'm talking about playing into hand traps and board breakers. So how you can dodge maybe some hand traps, and yeah, what board breakers do to the board, which hand traps are good against the deck, which hand traps and board breakers aren't good against the deck. Yeah. Then cards that counter branded in the fourth chapter. Yeah, just showing you some cards that are really, really good against branded, and maybe yeah, against some cards you cannot do anything, so you have to just watch out for those cards, and yeah, be careful. Then the fifth chapter is tips, tricks, and secret effects. I made a list of cards that have like effects that you maybe do not know if you haven't played Branded before, and so this also helps you if you play Branded or if you do not play Branded, so you can see what the opponent is maybe planning to do. And yeah, I'm just showing you a lot of secret effects that the Branded deck has that sometimes help you playing against it or playing it itself to know them. And then the sixth chapter is about the one and two card combos. I posted a deck profile, and yeah, obviously for those are existing combos, and I made a lot of the combos and showing you them in the optimal way that I found out how to play them in replays. And the seventh and last bullet point is combos under Fuwalos and Retaliating C. So Fuwalos and Retaliating C are difficult cards to handle for Branded, and you kind of have to play in a specific way to be able to play against them. And yeah, I will show you that in the last point of the video. Okay, let's start with chapter 1 and let's go over the deck stats. So what I did here is I made some categories to classify a deck. And yeah, I made some categories for going first, for going second, and for the overall gameplay. Let's go over them and I can tell you a bit about what I thought about the categories. So the going first board is just how strong the board is that the deck can produce when it goes first. And yeah, 10 out of 10 would be like low-key unbreakable. You can never lose if you end on that board. And 0 out of 10 would be like really bad. And I think Branded is like on the stronger side. The end board is super strong. It's really layered. You have interruption on the field, you have interruption in the graveyard. All your monsters trigger when they get destroyed or have a graveyard effect. You also have like interruption for the spell and trap zone, so you have a really layered board that's super hard to break. And yeah, that's why I think it's an 8 out of 10. If you make your board, you most of the time win. And then also for going first, it's important how good a deck can play through hand traps. And usually hand traps are like the big counter to Branded. For example, in the normal TCG, Ash Blossom and Impulse are like insane hand traps against Branded, right? Sometimes you cannot even play through them. But in Genesis, those cards are really high pointed, and there are some weaker hand traps that are played. For example, Whaler or Ghost Mono are really big, or Ogre, Nibiru, and also Fuwalos. And those are all hand traps that are pretty strong and can be really strong against Branded. But I think they won't instantly kill Branded. And if you have the right hand, you can easily play through them. This is why I gave playing through hand traps here a 6 out of 10, because yes, they can be stopped, but depending on the hand, you can yeah, just play through those hand traps. And yeah, this was the thinking behind that. And the last category is resisting board breakers. Resisting board breakers is how good does it play into board breakers, and or how easily your board gets broken with one board breaker. And this is like Yeah, board breakers are doing something. For example, if the opponent gives you a dark ruler, it just deletes like 3 or 4 interruptions for you if they want to, or if they have like a cosmic cyclone for your back row or whatever, right? So it does something, but you are resisting this by having a layered board. So I think there's like just evenly that completely kills you, right? So board breakers like that, but even evenly you could maybe like out by playing the Blazing Branded King, the card that's here in the background. So there are ways to play around every board breaker. So they hurt, but you can do something against them. So when it's about going second, there is a thing that's really important. It's the non-engine, because usually you're not really winning if you go second if you're not playing any non-engine, and alone to break a board just with your engine is usually not really that possible. And yeah, for Brent it's a bit weird because you cannot play a lot of non-engine. This is why it's 4 out of 10 here. You in this deck I have 9 slots for non-engine, which is kind of good for a branded deck, but not really good overall. Other decks have like 10 to 15 to even 17, 20 spots for non-engine, and so it's not a big strength of branded. So they have to play like board breakers, and yeah, because board breakers maybe do more than just one hand trap. If you have hand traps, you want to pair them. To compensate for that, Brandon is actually pretty good at board breaking itself, and the engine itself can actually break boards kind of well. And if you pair the engine together with one board breaker, this can help a lot. So 7 out of 10 for board breaking. You kind of have Fall of Albaz that can break boards. Your monsters aren't really that it doesn't really hurt if your monsters get popped, right? So the interruption of destroying isn't really strong against branded. Just like negating is really good against branded, and maybe like banishing and graveyard interruption is strong. But overall, your engine is pretty good at playing into stuff. And then on top of that, you kind of have a good OTK potential with branded, because your monsters are just huge. So every monster that comes out of the extra deck is like 2,500 to 3K. So you kind of have a lot of monsters that can just beat into the opponent's face, and that helps a lot. Then also a pretty big point for decks is like the consistency, and I think branded is there like at a top level, because you kind of never have dead hands. You play some bricks in the deck, but usually every hand plays like on a way. Maybe it's not like the perfect way, but even if you draw like 2 to 3 bricks, if you have one playable card, your hand can still play like perfectly fine usually. But the biggest strength of branded is actually their recovery. So if you go first and build a board, and even if they manage to break your board, you have so many cards to just continue playing. For example, if you resolve Mirror Jade twice in the end phase, you have 2 cards that use their effect to get you something from the deck. You have Cartesia that's returning, Highspirits that can return, even the Branded and the Blazing King can return. So there are so many cards as follow-up in this deck. It's really hard to do something. Also the fact, if you out the Mirror Jade, that it destroys the opponent's board and utilizes like the advantage that the opponent gained. Branded has a super strong recovery. And also together with that comes the grind game. The grind game is a bit of a different thing for me. It's more like how long can this deck play, and sometimes it can get out of resources, because if you don't have any Albus left, it can be hard to continue playing, and sometimes you are wasting them really fast, or if your Rebellion doesn't resolve, sometimes you have a lot of them banished. And if you cannot if you don't have an Albus left, sometimes you cannot grind even further than like turn 3 or 4, but you have a super strong grind game if you play it right. And the last thing that's actually a negative thing for Branded a bit, it's difficulty. So if you play like a long tournament with Branded, sometimes it can be really hard to do that, because you kind of have to think a lot, and every hand plays like super different, and you cannot really make your like overall, this is my combo and I just do this and then I'm finished. You have to think about every step. And also, if you established your board, it's not an auto win because you have to interact with your opponent. You don't have really a no button. You don't have negate, so you're winning over like count advantage and pops and banishes and yeah, and removal. So uh, you always have to think with this deck. So it's really hard to play actually. So that's for the deck stats. I hope this helped you to get a bit of a overview for Branded. And yeah, let's go to the next category. I want to talk now about some matchups for Branded. I included the most frequent and best decks in Genesis here, and I also wrote down some things you have to keep in mind when you play against those decks. Let's start with Kill Tune. So overall, Kill Tune is not a really bad matchup for Branded. Uh, Against their engine, you're pretty strong because they have like the ability to pop spells and traps and monsters with their fusions. So that's not really crazy good against Branded, but they have an Omni Negate with their engine, a targeting Omni Negate. This can hurt sometimes if they hit your Branded fusion, so keep this in mind to play around their Omni Negate. And what can also really hurt is their hand traps. They have a lot of hand traps they can play, and they will play a lot of those tuner hand traps. And if they have too many of them, you cannot really out them with board breakers. If they just have two Veilers in their hand, if they go first and a Mourner, it's super hard for you to play through that going second. And yeah, this can be like a really hard thing to do. And they also can recycle their hand traps with one of their synchros. So this is what you have to keep in mind to play around. And also sometimes they play a Delta package, which can also really hurt because Delta can just negate Branded Fusion. So yeah, keep that in mind. Yeah. So Archmage can be a hard matchup for Branded if you go second, because you kind of need hand traps to stop that deck. And yeah, they have an Omni Negate in the Arcturus, which can negate Branded Fusion. They have a Finmel to negate all monsters non-target, which can really hurt. They can, on top of that, play a lot of hand traps and also have more negates and a super strong board. So yeah, this is a really hard matchup if you go second. So this is a reason why you also play cards like Vados, the Eruption Dragon of Extinction, to just try to stop their board from coming out. And but yeah, also if you go first, you kind of have an okay matchup. But yeah, hand traps hit you. Against Punk, your matchup is actually pretty fine, I think. If you go first, your interruptions really hurt the deck because you have so many pops and banishes and whatever. So they have a really hard time to play through your board. They do play a lot of hand traps, but a lot of them are like targeting hand traps or ogre and stuff like that. So this could be fine going first. Going second, it can be harder because they build a huge board. But Fuwalos is good against that deck. Board breakers are also excellent against that deck, and you can play a lot of board breakers. So I think your matchup overall against Punk is pretty good. And yeah, if you have a board breaker, usually you win against that deck if you go second. Dracotail is a bit tricky. So the problem with Dracotail is if they go first, Sting and Flame. So Sting really does hurt your deck. They can banish like your single Branded Fusion. They can banish your cards that you send to the graveyard. And also Flame can negate the Branded Fusion. Flame hurts a lot. And but out from that, their interruptions aren't that strong against you. And they, on top of that, cannot really play hand traps. So this is also a added bonus. They cannot hit you with hand traps. So if you go first, they kind of have to have board breakers to break your board. But if you build your board correctly, this is fine. But yeah, you cannot really negate their Keto Draco Tail or their Rahu if you go first. So they kind of always play against you because you cannot negate their board. But I think you're still favored, and the matchup is, I would not say the worst, but also not the best, because just specifically of Sting and Flame hurting you a lot. Super Quantum, though, is probably your worst matchup, because board breakers aren't doing anything against that. If you go second and you cannot stop their Great Magnus from coming out, you just instantly lose, and you're only playing like Fuwalos in your deck, and they can just build their great Magnus even through Fuwalos. You kind of have to rely on drawing Kaijus or maybe drawing Vados to yeah, pop their field spell. But yeah, I think this is like the worst matchup you have. If you go first, you have a chance of winning, but if you go second, Super Quantum is your worst matchup, and you need a Kaiju to do something. Chimera Hacker Hands is a bit different. What is really hurting if you go second is there are counter traps, because you cannot respond to the counter traps, because usually if your opponent tries to engage something, you sometimes can chain Cartesia or whatever, right? Or chain block, and I think the counter traps make it especially hard for you to play. Also, the hand trap can hurt of the Chimera deck, but the other interruptions of the Chimera part aren't that strong against your deck. So yeah, it depends if they play the Abels, the Sync Keeper, the original Sync Keeper, and you cannot activate your quick paste belts, then you're in big trouble. But usually they don't in this version of the deck, so I think the matchup is fine. If you go first, it's also a bit weird because the pops aren't hurting that much for Chimera because it's a fusion deck. You cannot really negate their fusions, but they have to they have to play with their monsters on the board. So banishes and stuff like that can hurt a deck. So I think you're highly favored if you go first, and in overall in the matchup, I think you're also favored. But Vanquished Soul is probably the best matchup for Branded, because your main interruption, which is Mirror Jade, doesn't target and also banishes and removes the cards. Also, their main interruptions is like pops, so pops do not really hurt Branded, and uh, you cannot maybe not destroy their monsters, right? But you can banish them, and you have a stronger grind game than them because they don't have the Link 1. So I think this is the best and most favorite matchup for Branded. They can also play no Handtraps, so this is also a good thing. The only thing that's maybe a bit annoying is probably the Regenesis engine, if they play the Omni Negate for the Regenesis engine. So that's like the only thing. But I think you are highly favored in a Vanquished Soul matchup. And I also include the Odeon Temple of Kings of Pophis deck because this is also a hard matchup for Branded. Because if they go first, yeah, they have a lot of Omni Negates and also counter traps, and this is hurting Branded a lot. And also, if you go first, it's also pretty hard because if they just set 5, you can maybe pop one of this card, but yeah, it's not really a good matchup. So I also included it here because it's especially hard for Brandon to play into that deck. So let's talk about playing into hand traps and board breakers. The first hand trap I want to talk, or hand traps I want to talk about, is Effect Veiler and also Ghost Mona and Moonlit Chill. Both of them target a monster to negate their effects. Ghost Mona can always be used, Effect Veiler only in the main phase. But Ghost Mona cannot target your normal summon, so those are like the differences. You kind of have to be a bit careful with Aluber. If you special summon him during with Brilliant Opening, it can always be targeted with Mourner even in the draw phase. But if you special summon him in the draw phase, you can dodge an Effect Veiler, so you always have to like consider, is he on Veiler or is he on Mourner? If he's on Mourner, you kind of want to add it with Branded Opening and then normal summon it, so they cannot hit it with Mourner. If he's on Veiler, you will just special summon him in the draw phase with Opening. And the other way to play around those hand traps is Blazing Cartesia. You can always just fusion deployment her out and then use her to dodge the effects of Mourner and Veiler. The next effect I want to talk about, or the next cards I want to talk about, is Ghost Ogre. Ghost Ogre is not that crazy against Bandit, but it can hurt specifically on Cartesia effect, because if you activate Cartesia and they chain Ogre, you cannot fuse with Cartesia, so you kind of force into fusing something else. And it also hurts because Ghost Ogre can be activated in every turn if they use it on your Fallen of Albaz. So if you reborn Fallen of Albaz, for example, with Rindbrom in the opponent's turn, and then use its effect to fuse away, you kind of have to fuse away your own Fallen of Albaz. If they chain Ogre, then this will also hurt a lot. So keep that in mind. Getting hit with Nibiru can sometimes hurt, but It's usually not that crazy because Nibiru triggers your Grangoniol Grave effect, and then you will just banish the Grangoniol and you then immediately have access to Guiding Quem, so the floating effects are really strong against Nibiru, and also all your graveyard effects like Albion and Titanic Clad will always be like a thing in the end phase that trigger, and so Nip wiping your board kind of outs your Mirror Jade, but you can also chain the Mirror Jade and banish something else to have even more cards like Sprint the Iron Dash Dragon that all trigger in the graveyard. The only time when it hurts is if you kind of have to start with Quem to play, right? Then the Nibiru hurts, but other from that, Nibiru isn't that crazy against Branded. For Crow and Ghost Bell and to an extent like Skullmeister, it's a bit weird because yes, they can be used for example, Crow and Skullmeister can be used to get out your Albion and your Titaniclad in the from the graveyard, so they cannot resolve their end phase effect. So this can hurt actually. Um, but it's usually not enough to just stop the deck to just get rid of one of those effects. So it's actually fine. But a thing that also really hurts is for Ghost Bell and for DD Crow. Those can hit the target for Branded in red, and this is like usually a crucial effect. So on this, they can actually hurt, but overall, it's always just a trade 1-for-1 actually, and it doesn't really stop you overall. And about Retaliating C and also Fuwalos, those hand traps are super strong against Branded and probably the hardest counters to the deck. And you have to play in a specific way to out those cards. For Retaliating C, you have to find a way to remove it from the board, but you will always lose resources in by doing that. And for Fuwalos, you have to play really careful and also give up some resources to still make like 2 or 3 interruptions, but give in the process some draws to the opponent. So yeah, it's really hard. In the last point, in the last part of this video, I will show you exactly how to play with some hands into Fuwalos and Retaliating C. If we talk about some board breakers, Dark Ruler and also Book of Eclipse are okay, but like not a really big thing for the deck. Dark Ruler ensures you to survive the turn, which is actually crazy for Branded. Yeah, it can take you some interruptions, the same for Book of Eclipse, but your monsters stay on the board and can still be used even if they're face down for fusion materials, so this is fine. And then you just have to rely on your interruption that comes from the graveyard and from the spell and trap zone, which is usually branded in red. And if you have Mirror Jade on the board, you can chain it to Book of Eclipse, or if it got Dark Ruled, you can use it later to just pay the cost and then go for Rindbram. For Rindbram, you can reborn Albaz. So there are a lot of ways to yeah, play with the board breakers. Same accounts for Dark Hole, or even if people are mad and play just have it like Raigeki. If they manage to remove your board, you do the same. You play, you chain the Mirror Jade, and then you play with Brand in red or the other spells and traps you set, and then you also play with the graveyard effects. And if you have branded opening in graveyard, this actually does nothing because opening just says you can banish it and then protect your fusion monsters from being destroyed. So yeah, opening actually strong against Raigeki and Dark Hole. And evenly though is like a really different thing. Evenly just straight up kills the deck. It really hurts. You could let your Mirror Jade be on board, but you in the process you lose a lot of resources. You can still do stuff then if the Mirror Jade is on the board. It's still like interruption follow up. But the best thing to have against that is a Brightest Blazing Branded King. This one can just straight up negate the evenly match. So yeah, this really helps to have if the opponent has Mirror Jade. If he has like something like MST or Cosmic Cyclone or Twin Twister, this is not that crazy. Usually you have stuff like Brand in Red on the board, like face down, or Brand Retribution. So if they MST the Brand in Red, you can just chain the Brand in Red, right, and fuse into something. So this is usually 1-for-1 or 0-for-1, so it's not that crazy good. And yeah, the last card I want to talk about is actually Ultimate Slayer, and Ultimate Slayer always hurts because it sends for cost. For example, a Garura, and then draw a card, and then it also can bounce your Mirror Jade. So yeah, and you cannot chain your Mirror Jade to that. You have to chain something like Branded and Red, and then you can chain the Mirror Jade to get the Rindrum into the graveyard. Whereas here, the Rindrum, you can have that in the graveyard, and then yeah. But this is why Ultimate Slayer always hurts a lot, and you have to keep in mind that this card counters your deck hard. Okay, this part is more for uh, maybe players that want to play against branded or don't like branded. It's carded counter branded, but I think it's also really important to know if you play branded which cards are really strong against your deck. And there are endless cards that really hard counter branded if you go for second, for example. And all of those cards that I have here are 0 points, so there are a lot of options to counter branded. And I think this is not even like all of the cards that counter them. Let's go through them. The Simul Archfiend. Simul Archfiend let you only summon one fusion monster, so if you already have one, you cannot fuse more. This stops your turn entirely. Eradicator Epidemic Virus steals all your spell cards. Your deck really hardly functions on spell cards. Mistaken Arrest lets you not search anymore. Brand Fusion is just at 1. If you hard draw, that's fine, but you cannot search then anymore. Like you always have to search for Brand Fusion, so Mistaken Arrest really kills you. Dimensional Fissure completely controls the graveyard. If you're not able to send stuff to the graveyard, your whole grind game is like gone, and it's really hard for you to out Dimensional Fissure. And same is also for Macrocosmos, right? This also hard counters you. And for example, also Mirror Jade doesn't work against if Macrocosmos or Dimensional Fissure is on the board, because he has to send something from the extra deck for cost to the graveyard, so you cannot even activate its effect. Silent Graveyard is like a similar thing. It also yeah, negates all the graveyards effect that you could have. You cannot use anything in the end phase. Non-fusion area, yeah, neither player can fusion summon, I guess. That really hurts for branded. Light Imprisoning Mirror is also strong against branded. A lot of your monsters are light, and even worse is Shadow Imprisoning Mirror. You cannot use on the field dark monsters and also in the graveyard, which is like ridiculous. If they flip this against you, you instantly lose. Uh, Imperial Iron Wall also pretty strong because you cannot banish. Mirror Jade banishes, or Albion banishes, Branded Red banishes. A lot of cards that banish, and like one of the worst counter cards, Grave of the Super Ancient Organism, level 6 or higher, special summon monsters on the field cannot declare attacks, nor can players activate their effects. If they have this on the board, you need non-engine to out this. There's no way inside of your engine to out this, because you cannot play the Fallen and the Virtuous card. So yeah, those are just cards that really hard counter branded, and I think you kind of have to know some of those to know what you face. Now let's talk about tips, tricks, and secret effects. So the first thing I want to mention here is Albion the Shroud Dragon. It's a really cool card. It has some really cool things to do. And yeah, usually you use its effect to place this card on the bottom of the deck, and then send for cost one Fall of Albaz or one branded card from the deck into the graveyard to then draw a card. But this guy also has another way to resolve this effect. You can also send one branded spell from your hand for him, so he can special summon himself. Why should you do this? Why should you send for cost from hand? So the thing is, sometimes you want to have a Fallen of Albus. For example, if you already went through all your free Fallen of Albus and you don't have access to one more, and you want to fuse into one, then you can use Albion to summon itself, and then on the field he is Fallen of Albus. And they could, for example, go into Lubellion, and then shuffle back another Fallen of Albus, and then you're into your Albus resource loop. So this could be a reason to use the summoning effect, but another one that actually comes up is if you actually draw Branded Retribution and you want to have it in the graveyard to add back the Branded Fusion. And for example, let's say you have Quam in hand and Branded Retribution and also Albion the Sharp Dragon, but no other way to search like Branded Fusion. So you normal summon Quam, send Branded Fusion into graveyard. Then you use Albion, use its effect to send Retribution from your hand to the graveyard, and then a special summon himself. And then you can use Retribution and get back to Branded Fusion. So this is a way to utilize this effect, and it's an effect that not a lot of people know, and I think sometimes this comes up and this like differentiates good branded players from just normal branded players, right? So I really like this neat interactions. The next card I want to talk about and the hidden effects of this card is Brand Opening. One effect I already mentioned here in this video, and I think also the other I mentioned, but I want to say it again. The one effect is the graveyard effect, that you can banish this card to protect fusion monsters from being destroyed. This works on your own effect and also on the other effects. For example, if you target one of your fusions with Final Bring of the End Times, you can then destroy one of the opponent's monsters and protect your own fusion with Branded Opening. Because it says if fusion monster you control would be destroyed by card effect, doesn't matter who destroys it. And you can also just protect every monster from a card like Raigeki. And the other secret effect of this card is that you can actually add the monster. You don't have to special summon it. This is just good against Fuwalos, right? If you activate this card and the opponent chains Fuwalos, you can just add the Aluber to your hand, and yeah, then it's just normal summon it, and then he gets one draw less. The next card I want to talk about is Tragedy. Tragedy has one obvious effect. The obvious effect is if this card is sent to the graveyard or banished by a card effect, you can add one Despia monster from your deck to your hand. Right, this is the obvious effect. The other effect not a lot of people know about is you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one branded spell trap in your graveyard, set it to your field. But you can only use one effect of Thespian Tragedy per turn, and only once that turn. So you have to choose which effect you want to use. And this is really helpful if you only play like one Branded Fusion, because this is 40 points, so you can only play one. So sometimes having a Thespian Tragedy in your graveyard to just reset a branded spell trap is super helpful, and you should keep that in mind. Sometimes it's not always right to just instantly activate it. For example, if you activate Branded Fusion and it gets negated, the activation gets negated, and you have Tragedy in your hand together with Cartesia on the field, you use Cartesia and Tragedy, and you can reset Branded Fusion and activate it again, right? So Tragedy is super helpful in this deck. Also in a grind game, if you already used Retribution to get back Branded Fusion, you can get it back with Tragedy. That also helps. Then another neat interaction also has to do something with Albion the Shrouded Dragon, and he sends for cost into the graveyard. But you can activate this effect if he's in the hand and also if he's in the graveyard. And if he's in the graveyard, his name is Fallen of Albaz. So if you send Branded in White for cost, or a card like Screams of the Branded, they will use their second secret effect. The secret effect is during the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there to activate the effect of Fall of Albaz this turn, you can set this card. And the other one has the same thing. You can also set this card. So because he is Fall of Albaz in the graveyard and you sent this for cost to activate it, you can actually set those in the end phase. Kind of neat little effect. Doesn't come up that often, but it's just a free card that you can get with the Albion the Shrouded Dragon effect if you use its effect in the graveyard. Then I want to also talk about Rindbram. Usually you use Rindbram to send it with Mirror Jade and then Reborn Fall of Albaz in the opponent's turn. But if you actually hard summon Rindbram with, for example, Muchabi Fuwalos, which is Winged Beast, because you just need a Winged Beast, Beast Warrior, or Beast to summon this, then if it's in the graveyard, you can actually choose if you want to summon Fall of Albaz or itself. So this card cannot just summon Fallen of Albaz, you can also just banish the Fallen of Albaz and then summon itself, because this card on the field has a super strong effect. And the effect is when a Fusion Synchro XYZ or Link monster effect is activated, you can negate that effect, and then you can return one monster from the field to the hand. This is also crazy. If you manage to end on Mirror Jade and also end on Rindbram, you can use Mirror Jade effect in the end phase and send for cost, for example, Titaniclad, and then you can chain Rindbram to negate your own Mirror Jade, and then you can get yourself one card from your field to the hand back. For example, if you have Aluber still on the field, you can get it back as a follow-up, and then, because Mirror Jade did not resolve, you can use its effect again in the next turn, and you still have the cost as a plus. So I really like Rindbram for that effect. Then also Aluber has a secret effect. Yeah, usually he's just searches view branded fusion, but he has also the effect you can if your if a face-up fusion monster you control is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, while this card is in your graveyard, trigger effect, you can target one effect monster your opponent controls, special summon this card. If you do, negate the target monster effects until the end of this turn, but you can only use one of his effects. This really can help you to survive a turn sometimes. For example, if they remove your Mirror Jade for whatever reason with, for example, Ultimate Slayer, right, you could then use Aluber, target one of their monsters, special summon this defense mode and negate one of their monsters, and you have one body more to survive, and the monster is also negated. So this is a secret effect you should remember also if you play against Branded. And the last thing, secret effect I want to talk about is Branded in Red. This one usually just adds you one Fall of Albaz from the graveyard, and then you can fuse by banishing. But you can also target Despia monsters with it, and you don't have to fuse with this card. You can just add the card to hand, and then the fusion summoning is optional. So if you just want to have your Aluber back, because you just want to normal summon it to search, for example, Branded Fusion, you could also do that with Branded in Red. So you can also keep that in mind, that this is possible. And another thing is, which is important to know if you play a mirror match or against Branded, the monsters that are summoned with Branded in Red cannot attack directly in the turn they are summoned. So you cannot finish your opponent with Branded in Red. So that's it for the secret effects or tips and tricks for Branded. You can tell me in the comments if you knew all of those, or maybe there was something new for you that would really interest me. And also, if you have more of those neat interaction with Branded, just write them in the comments. I would really like to hear that. So how do you actually combo with Branded? So it's usually, like always, the same. The first step in a combo is always to try to get to Branded Fusion, because Branded Fusion enables the rest of your deck. You have different options to get to Branded Fusion. You can use Aluber to search Branded Fusion. You can get Aluber out with Opening. So Opening and Aluber are ways to get to Branded Fusion. But you also have like different ways. You can also use Highspirits to get to Spriggan's Kit, and Spriggan's Kit can also get you Branded Fusion, but it's more costly because you have to shuffle a card back from your hand. And a different way also you can do is not searching Branded Fusion. You can also send Branded Fusion to graveyard. You have different ways for doing that. You can use Guiding Quem to send it to the graveyard, or you can use Albion. But you have to do both ways to send them, because you want to send with Albion or with Quem Branded Fusion, and with the other one you have to send Branded Retribution. Then with Retribution you can add it back. Another way could also be, for example, if you have Tragedy and Cartesia together. So if Tragedy is in the graveyard, you can fuse with Cartesia, and then with Grand Guignol you can send Albion. Albion can send Branded Fusion. Then you can use Tragedy in the graveyard if it was already there to banish it, and then set Branded Fusion. So those are like the ways you can get to Branded Fusion. If you already have Branded Fusion, then in Genesis, most of the time, actually Branded Fusion resolves. And if it resolves, you will probably always go into Albion. If you actually have access to Cartesia, you will send with Albion the Golden Sword. So you will see this in the combos. If you don't have access to Cartesia, you will send Koirese the Octodic Light. Why do we have to play those two and send those at different times? The reason is Albion. You will always go into Albion if you can, and the goal is to fuse with Albion and then get Albion into graveyard, so you will be able to use its graveyard effect. And if you already have access to Cartesia, you can get Albion to the graveyard with Cartesia. If you don't, you have to do it with Koirese. So this is like the sequencing you do. And then if you have Albion in the graveyard, you kind of have like Mirror Jade, and then the end phase you will resolve some effects. Sometimes you will also get Titanic Light in the graveyard, then you have even more effects in the graveyard. But this is like the usual way you will be able to sequence your turn and the steps you want to get ahead and the things that have to get together. And you have like different ways to get to this end goal of building a board, but it will like always play a bit of the same. Okay, the first combo is just the Aluber one-card combo. You have nothing else here. I always just symbol this through non-engine cards, Ultimate Slayer and Fuwalos. Those are 4 blanks and just 1 Aluber. So you start with obviously normal summoning Aluber, then you search Branded Fusion, then activate Branded Fusion, send to the graveyard Fall of Albaz and Koirese the Octodic Light, because right here you have no other way to get away the Albion. So this is why you have to send Koirese. Then Albion effect, banish Aluber and also Fall of Albaz to go into Lubellion, and then Lubellion effect, discard 1 card, and then shuffle back the Lubellion and Fall of Albaz to get for Mirror Jade. And then Koirese effect can tribute the Albion, and then in the end phase you will be able to set with Albion. Right here you cannot set Branded in red because you don't have like a Fall of Albaz or another target for Branded in red in graveyard, so you will set Brightest Blazing Branded King. And yeah, then it's the opponent's turn. I will always symbol like the interruptions you have with the token, and then you use Mirror Jade, that's 1 interruption, send Titanic Light as follow-up, then you have Brightest Blazing Branded King as another interruption, so it's 2. And if they out your Mirror Jade, you will also have the grave effect of Mirror Jade that can pop the whole board. I will also count this as 1 interruption. So from 1 card, this is actually pretty good. This is like the baseline of the combo. You always want to get the Albion end phase effect to search, or to set rather, and then the Mirror Jade on board. And on top of that, if you have more cards, you can even add more. Okay, let's take it one step further now. Now we have a 2-card combo with Aluber again, and then also Albion in our hand. This can also be Fallen of Albaz. It doesn't matter if it's Albion or Fallen of Albaz. So, and the other cards are blanks again. So we start again with normal summoning Aluber, and then add to a hand Branded Fusion. And then right here I activate Albion and pay for cost the Fallen of Albaz into the graveyard. And then we can just draw a card. I just represent this here with drawing another blank, but because I just want to show you what those cards right here do. Then we use again Branded Fusion, and then send again Koirese and Fall of Albaz. Right here you also are now protected from DD Crow, because usually if you go for Albion here, they can just DD Crow your Fall of Albaz, and then you cannot fuse into Mirror Jade anymore, or into Lubellion rather. So you have another Fall of Albaz. This also helps you to play around that more. Then Albion effect, banish Aluber and also Fall of Albaz to go into Lubellion, and then Lubellion effect again to shuffle those 2 back to get to Mirror Jade, and then we use Koirese to get Albion to graveyard, and then in the end phase we set right here again Brightest Blazing Branded King. We have Fall of Albaz here, so we could also send set the brand in red. So it depends on the rest of your hand, I think, here. But right here, I think it's alright to just set the Brightest Blazing Branded King, because you have nothing else on the field that really matters, right? Because this one negates everything but one Fall of Albaz fusion, it doesn't negate, right? So if you have like more stuff here on the field, it's better to send Branded in red. If you don't have more, it's okay to set this one. And then we go into the next turn. then Mirror Jade is one interruption, and right here it's important that you have send Rindbrom, because you have now Fallen of Albus in the graveyard, so this is super strong. So this is one interruption, then Brightest Blazing Branded King, second interruption, then we can use Rindbrom and fuse with Reborn the Fall of Albus and fuse with him and discard one card. It depends on what he has, that this one is even one interruption more. So if he has, for example, like a dark monster, or even if it's let's say a light monster, both is pretty common in Yu-Gi-Oh! So it's not that unlikely. You have one interruption more. Let's say now he has a dark monster, so we fuse this away, then we can use Lubellion, shuffle Lubellion, and also Albion from the graveyard back into the deck, and then go for Dragostapelia, which is another interruption. So we have one interruption through Albaz and another interruption from Dragostapelia. Or there's another thing that you could summon. You could also summon Chaos, the Gas Source Dragon. So this has was fused with a light and a dark dragon, so you could pop 2 cards. And yeah, this is also a super strong interruption. And then again, if your Mirror Jade gets outed, you have the Mirror Jade graveyard effect again. So if you see, just having one more Fall of Albus in the form of Albion, then it's even better. Then you have one more card in the hand. Or if it's just Fall of Albus in itself, gets you like two more interruptions usually. So this is why it's important to have a lot of Fall of Albus in your deck. Let's now also add Cartesia to the mix. We have a combo now with Fusion Deployment and Aluber the Jester of Despia. We start with Fusion Deployment, and right here we special Cartesia. We do this before we normal the Aluber the Jester of Despia, so this cannot be Whalers. Then we normal Aluber, use effect of Aluber at Branded Fusion. Then activate Branded Fusion. Then we send right here Fallen of Albus and the Golden Sword. So this is pretty important to send here because we don't need Kreuzer now, because we can get the Albion easier into our graveyard with the Cartesia. And yeah, its effect, it's pretty good, because if something gets banished, you can also banish it to reborn your Cartesia. So you will have it on the field for the next turn. Yeah, then Albion effect to banish 2 cards for Lubellion again, but right here you will go chaining 1 Albion and then chaining 2 Cartesia, because you want to have the Albion and the Cartesia in the graveyard, and Cartesia here needs to be in the graveyard so you can reborn it with Golden Sword. So because it will trigger in the next chain after the banishing of the Albion. So chaining 2 Cartesia, fuse Albion and herself into the Grand Guignol. And then you banish Fallen of Albus and also Aluber to go into Lubellion. So then right here we have a big chain. We have Lubellion that can fuse and discard something. We have the Golden Sword Soul that will be able to banish itself and reborn Cartesia. And we also have Grand Guignol to send something into the graveyard. And yeah, you will use Lubellion chaining 1 to discard Ultimate Slayer, then also chaining 2 Grand Guignol, and then chaining 3 the Golden Sword Soul. This could also be like chaining 2 to chain block, for example, for something like Ghost Spell or anything like that. Yeah, but then you will banish the Golden Sword Soul as the cost, and then you will reborn the Cartesia. Grand Guignol will send Titanic Lad here, and Lubellion will shuffle itself and Fallen of Albus back for Mirror Jade. Then we will just go actually into the end phase. Then with Albion we will set the Branded in red, or we could set also Retribution, because we have Albion and also Titanic Lad in the graveyard, so we always have a Retribution live. And we could also send the Brightest Blazing Branded King, but this is not optimal here, because we then also negate our Cartesia and our Grand Guignol and the Quem that will be on the field, right? So this is not the best option. Only if you know that the opponent is on something like Evenly, I would actually set this here. And yeah, right here, I recommend actually to set Branded in red. Then also Titanic Lad effect to special summon the Guiding Quem. And then Quem effect, you will send another Albus, because previously we had no Albus in the graveyard. Then it's the opponent's turn. In the opponent's turn, you can use Mirror Jade, and then with Mirror Jade we send for sure Rindra. This is one interruption. Then Cartesia effect, fuse Mirror Jade and also Grangoniol into Dragostapelia. And then we can use Quem to reborn the Mirror Jade. And right here we have another interruption with Dragostapelia, and then another Mirror Jade effect to banish. So this is like 3 interruptions right here. And then also we can send Albion as follow-up. Then we can use Rindram to banish itself to reborn Fallen of Albaz. Then assume we fuse again with a dark monster to go for Lubellion. This is interruption number 4. And then Lubellion shuffle itself and also Albion back. So you can go for Chaos Disguise Source Dragon and pop 2 cards. This is the 5th interruption. And then we still have like Brand in red, which is insane. So to add Fallen of Albaz, and then we can fuse the Chaos Source Dragon and Blazing Cartesia, because we don't have to use the Fallen of Albaz to fuse with it. We can also just fuse with something else and keep this in hand as follow-up. To go for Grangoniol, and Grangoniol is also an interruption because we can send a Malong, and Malong will bounce something on the field. So this is the 6th interruption. And then we also have Grangoniol. If the opponent uses effect to special summon a monster, you can use Grangoniol, banish it, and special summon Quaritis. And Quaritis can also be the last and 7th interruption to get everything that's not a fusion level 8 or higher to 0. So it's really hard to kill you. And also if Quaritis gets outed not by battle, by something else, you can special summon Despia or Fall of Albaz. So this is like so many interruptions just out of those 2 cards. For the next combo, it's actually Aluber plus Branded Opening. In the early days of Branded, this was considered a brick. Now it's actually really, really good because you have multiple targets that you can special out with Opening. So you will start with normal summoning Aluber and getting Branded Fusion. And then right here, you actually activate Branded Fusion. And then if the opponent gives you the okay, so this resolves, or maybe he will chain Fuwalos or whatever, but you will first activate Branded Fusion, and then you will actually chain Branded Opening to it. And then with Branded Opening, you discard 1 card in your hand and special summon the Guiding Quem. Then Branded Fusion as chaining 1 will resolve and send Fallen of Albaz and also Blazing Cartesia the Virtues. And then special summon the Albion. Then we have the next chain. In the next chain, we can resolve 3 effects, like 3 trigger effects that we have. One trigger effect is Guiding Quem of sending 1 brand monster that mentions Fall of Albaz, or 1 card rather that mentions Fall of Albaz from the deck in the graveyard. The other effect is again Guiding Quem to reborn Blazing Cartesia. And the third effect is Albion the Branded Dragon that will fuse for your Lubellion. So right here, I will activate all 3. Then the first effect, like chaining 3, I will set always like the Quem to send, because then it cannot be like Ghost Belt, right? Those other 2 effects can be Ghost Belt. And to send the Golden Sword Soul into the graveyard. This will give us like the ability to have like follow-up or like interruption in the opponent's turn, because it can trigger. Then I will banish Aluber and Fallen of Albaz for the Lubellion, and then reborn the Blazing Cartesia. So right here, we are actually in Nip range. And in this combo, Nip can kind of hurt because your Guiding Quem is on the field already. So you have to keep that in mind. But we will have now a trigger effect. And if the opponent decides to nip here, it's not that crazy, because you could just then chain Cartesia to get everything in the graveyard. You also have like Albion, but it hurts more than in other combos, right? But you will actually chain the Cartesia here and then fuse away those 2. And if he decides to Nibiru you on the Cartesia effect, then it's also fine, because then you still have like Mirror Jade that will come in chaining 1, so it's not worth it for him to nip here. So then you will summon out the Grangoniol and then shuffle back Albaz and also the Lubellion for the Mirror Jade. And right here you will now have the trigger effect of Grangoniol and send into the graveyard the ad libitum, because right here you don't really need the Titanic Threat because you already have the Quem on the field. If you play a second Quem, you don't really have the problem with Nip right here, but I want to spend my points into different things, into non-engine, so I only play one Quem. That's like the only combo where Nip can hurt sometimes. And yeah, so this is why you actually send ad libitum here, because you already have like Quem. And ad libitum is a really good interruption because you can do the Mirror Jade twice then. And then you will go into the end phase, or as it's called and branded, main phase 3. Then you will activate Albion here, set Branded in Red. Branded in Red is really important here because you have ad libitum in the graveyard, and you also have the Golden Sword Soul, which can be triggered with Branded in Red. And then we will activate Cartesia to add to the hand, because the Golden Sword Soul can actually use its effect to summon it from the grave or from the hand, so it doesn't matter if it's in the graveyard or in the hand. And the one thing that's not really good at this combo is you don't end with Fallen of Albaz in the graveyard. So that's like the only thing. You could send with GENESYS Albion and then send Fallen of Albaz, but ad libitum is like more worth it to have because we have Branded in Red here. So then it's the opponent's turn. And in the opponent's turn, you can use Mirror Jade, send Sprint the Iron Dash Dragon, and then use Branded in Red, get ad libitum to your hand, and then banish ad libitum and also the Mirror Jade to special summon the Dragostapelia, and then ad libitum gets you back the Mirror Jade. Then Dragostapelia, another interruption, then you can use Mirror Jade again, send another card as follow-up, so we already have now 2 cards as follow-up. And then that's the third interruption. Then because something gets banished from Mirror Jade, we can use the Golden Sword Soul to special summon the Cartesia. And then Cartesia effect, we can fuse Cartesia and Mirror Jade into GENESYS and then use Quem effect and also GENESYS. And with GENESYS we can send Malong. Malong is an interruption to bounce a monster, and then we can reborn the Mirror Jade a second time, right? And yeah, then Malong bounces something. This is the 4th interruption. Then we use Mirror Jade the 3rd time in this turn, send another follow-up, which is Titanic Led, and Titanic Led can also get you out in the end phase the Fallen of Albaz, which will then be able to fuse away his board if he still has some of his board. Then you still have the effect of GENESYS left. You can also use this to special summon Despian Quarites. Quarites can use its effect to make everything to 0. So this is like a super strong and layered board. You have triple Mirror Jade and triple non-target banish, which is super strong, Dragostapelia, and the follow-up right here is insane. I will show you this in this combo. You have the Titanic Lad as follow-up, you have the Albion as follow-up, you have Sprint Iron Dash as follow-up, you have Cartesia that is coming back, so you have so many follow-up effects right here. So it's a crazy board that you have here. Okay, in the last replay, we are starting without Aluber once. We're starting with Branded and Highspirits and Albion. So let's go into the main phase. We activate Albion and pay cost by sending Fallen of Albaz. And then we chain the Branded and Highspirits to send the Albion from our hand to the graveyard, and also the Titanical Dash Dragon from our deck, from our extra deck to the graveyard, and add to our hand the Spriggan's Kit. And right here, sending the Titanic Lad is a bit more risky than sending the Spriggan's Kit. So you could also send Albion. If you know that the opponent is on a lot of hand traps and this is like your only play, I would probably not send the Titanic Lad because it's more risky, but I want to show you like the full potential of the combo. So we did send the Titanic Lad here. Then right here, we could special summon the Spriggan's Kit, but Ghost Mourner is actually a highly played card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis, so we don't really need our normal summon in this combo, so we can just normal summon the Spriggan's Kit. So we do that here to play around that, and then use the effect, add Branded Fusion to our hand, and then we have to shuffle back 1 card from our hand. Then use Branded Fusion, send Fallen of Albaz, and Koirese the Octaarctic Light, because right here we don't have access to the Cartesia, so we have to send Koirese and special summon Albion. Then Albion effect, you will banish a dark monster, which is Spriggan's Kit, and Fallen of Albaz to get out the Lubellion, and then Lubellion effect, discard 1 card, shuffle back Albaz, and the Lubellion for Mirror Jade. And then Koirze will tribute the Albion, and then we go actually to the end phase. But the difference right here is we also have like Titanic Clad in the graveyard and Fallen of Albaz, so this is stronger than the one card combo with Branded Fusion. Then we use Titanic Clad in the end phase to special summon the Quem, and the Quem effect will send us Cartesia here. Then we can also use Cartesia to add it to our hand, and then Albion to set right here Brand Retribution, and then we end the turn. This could also be like Brand in red, but I also wanted to show you some variations that you can do. Then it's the opponent's turn. We use Mirror Jade, that's one interruption, to send, importantly, Rindbram to reborn the Fallen of Albaz that we have. So the one interruption, then Rindbram effect. You will special summon Fallen of Albaz, use Albaz effect. Important is that if you add back the Cartesia, you have to discard the Cartesia here. But you kind of want to add back the Cartesia so you have more discards, because we assume here that he has a dark monster. So we fuse again the Albaz into the Lubellion. This is the second interruption, and then we need the last card in our hand as a discard. So we discard, and then we can also chain to the Lubellion the Quem to reborn the Cartesia, because it's now in the graveyard, right? And then we shuffle back Rindbram and the Lubellion for the Dracos Tapelia or the Spriggan's Kit. We could also shuffle that back for the Dracos Tapelia, so whatever we want to have back in our deck. Then the Dracos Tapelia is the third interruption. Then Retribution is the fifth interruption, the fourth interruption. And this one also shuffles you back your resources, so you get back the Titanic Light and the Albion. Then you can use the Cartesia effect, fuse those two into Grangonyol, and then Grangonyol can send the Malong, and is another interruption. That's the fifth. And then Grangonyol Grave or Field effect can banish itself and then go for Coraritis. That's the sixth interruption. And if they out the Mirror Jade, you will also have the graveyard effect of Mirror Jade, so this is the seventh interruption. And in the end phase, you can get back Cartesia, you can get back Highspirits. So yeah, you have a lot of follow-up and a whole bunch of interruptions with just those two cards. Holy, this turned out to be a long video. If you stayed until here, thank you a lot, and tell me that in the comments. And let's go to the last bullet point, the seventh one, combos under Fuwalos and Retaliating C. So I prepared some combos for Fuwalos because Fuwalos is more common than Retaliating C, and you will also face Fuwalos in game 1. So it's Aluber and Final Bringer of the End Times. This makes a different combo under Fuwalos. Then Aluber plus Deployment, Aluber plus Opening, and also Highspirits plus Albion. All those have like different ways and different amounts of draws you have to give under Fuwalos. And the other card I wanted to talk about is actually Retaliating C. And for Retaliating C, it's important that you just out the Retaliating C. And you have 3 different ways for that. You have like Fallen of Albaz, you have the Chaos the Scarsor string to pop it, and also Final Bringer of the End Times, funny enough. The other thing that really matters if you play against Retaliating C is actually when they activate the Retaliating C. So I prepared 2 combos, or it's read the same hand, but the Retaliating C gets dropped at different points of the combo. So let's get to the first situation. You start with Branded Opening and also have Final Bringer of the End Times. This can also be like Aluber. The combo doesn't really change much, but I wanted to show you some technical play. So let's go. You start with Branded Opening in the draw phase, because then you can dodge actually the Effect Veiler. And yeah, they decide to chain Fuwalos to the Branded Opening, because this will special summon from the deck if you want to. But you can also decide to just add the Aluber to the hand. Since they chain Fuwalos, you will just add it to the hand and then normal summon the Aluber. So you go into the main phase, normal summon the Aluber, use the effect, and you will search Branded Fusion here. If you have another monster here in the hand, for example Albion, you will have the option to just search the Branded in Highspirits to be able to just not give any draw. But right here, you kind of have to search Branded Fusion because you have nothing else in hand to send for Highspirits. Then you activate Branded Fusion, send Fallen of Albaz, and also Molchami Fuwalos. You will use Fuwalos as a fusion material here, and you have to give 1 draw. Then, yeah, the opponent draws 1 card. Now he's at 5 cards in hand. and you will special summon Rindbram, the Striking Dragon here, because Rindbram's on-field effect is actually a strong interruption. And right here you set the final bringer of the end times, and then it's the opponent's turn. You gave one draw, which is actually fine. And yeah, then it's his card. He starts with 6 cards in hand, and you have one interruption with Rindbomb to bounce. If a monster special stuff from the extra deck activates its effect, it's specifically Fusion, Synchro, XYZ, or Link monsters activate. Link monsters cannot activate in Genesis. Yeah, I know. You can negate the activation and then return one monster on the field to the hand. You can return his monster, or you could also just return the Aluber to have follow up for the next turn. This is one interruption. Then final bringer of the end times will be able to pop Rindbram. This would be the second interruption. And then, because Rindbram is in the graveyard, this is why it's important that you have final bringer of the end times. You will be able to reborn the Fallen of Albaz, or actually the Rindbram, but we already used the effect here, so we reborn the Albaz. Then Albaz effect, use its effect, discard one card, and then fuse into Mirror Jade in the ideal case, if they have an extra deck monster. If they don't have an extra deck monster, you can go for Lubellion first, and then go for Mirror Jade, like whatever, right? Then you can use Mirror Jade, have another interruption, that's the fourth interruption, and also have like Titanic Light in the end phase as follow-up. Okay, the second situation we have here is with Fusion Deployment and Aluber, and this is arguably one of the hardest situations where you could get Fuwa, because Fusion Deployment obviously special summons from the deck, so you have to give one draw at least. So we start with Fusion Deployment here, and yeah, you could also start with Aluber, but we always want to play around Whaler and Mourner if we can on our Aluber. So yeah, we activate that, and he chains Fuwalos, so we special summon the Cartesia, and then he will get one draw for sure. Then normal summon Aluber, get Branded Fusion, and right here we have to give another draw, but we fuse here with Mulchami Fuwalos and Fallen of Albaz. This could also be like a Spriggan's Kit or whatever, but I always like to keep this in the deck and use Fuwalos. And then we go again for the Rindbram, the Striking Dragon, and we have to give another draw here, but that's it, right? We cannot do more than that. Then it's the opponent's turn. He starts with 7 cards in his hand because we had to give him 2. And yeah, that we have Rindbram as an interruption, can get back the Albion to our hand or one of his monsters. Then we can use Cartesia, fuse Rindbram and herself into Grangoniol. Grangoniol itself is an interruption to send Malong, and that's the second interruption. And then we can use Rindbram to reborn Albaz. Then Albaz uses its effect to fuse, for example, into Lubellion if he has a dark monster, or if it's an extra deck monster, you can directly go into Jade. And that's the third interruption. Right here, we shuffle back and special summon maybe also the Scar Source Dragon. This is also possible, but we could also just go for Mirror Jade, which is like probably the better situation here. And then Mirror Jade can get one to the graveyard, send one as cost from the extra deck to the graveyard, and then banish one monster. That's the fourth interruption. And we also have Grangoniol to trigger, to special summon the Despian Quirites. We could also special summon Quem here, but there's not really a thing that we really want to reborn with Quem here, so it's the better way to just go for Quirites and then do everything to 0. That's the fifth interruption. And also it's kind of hard. If they out the Jade, it's also an interruption, right? And if they out the Quirites, we can now also special summon a Despia monster. That's also an interruption, so we could get to the Quem via Quirites. So it's hard to kill you through that. In the next hand, we have Branded Opening and Albion. And this needs to be specifically Branded Opening, but because with Branded Opening you can check for Fuwalos. So you activate Branded Opening in the draw phase, and then he will chain Fuwalos. And so you will just add the Aluber to the hand. Then in the main phase, now you actually have Albion in the hand, so you can decide with Aluber to get your Highspirits into the hand. Then you will use Albion, and right here it's important to send the Retribution, because Retribution will get you back the opening, so you can actually use it again in the next turn. So then you have Albion chaining 1, chaining 2, you will chain the branded Highspirits, show the Albion, and then discard the Albion, the branded dragon from the extra deck, and the Albion shrouded dragon to get you Blazing Cartesia. Then activate Blazing Cartesia effect in hand to special summon, because now you have Albaz in graveyard, and then you will use a Retribution to get you Branded Opening to the hand. Then you will set Branded Opening and go into the end phase. In the end phase, you will use Albion effect to set you Branded in red. Right here, you only have like Albion the Shrouded Dragon in graveyard, so Brand in red is live, but with opening, you will get the original Fallen of Albaz into the graveyard in his turn. But we have to mention there is no draw from Fuwalos here, so we entirely played without special summoning from the main or extra deck, so he won't get any draws, and he will start his turn with just 5 cards in the hand, so it was actually a -1 for him to use Fuwalos. So in the draw phase we can use opening, discard the Ultimate Slayer, and then special summon Guiding Quem, and Quem will dump us the original Fallen of Albaz, and then we can use Brand in red, targeting the original Albaz and fusing it and Aluber into the Lubellion. Then Lubellion effect chaining 1 and chaining 2 can be Quem right here, but we decide not to use it. We will just fuse into Mirror Jade, and then Mirror Jade effect is the first interruption. And yeah, we will actually keep the Quem because we want to reborn our Mirror Jade, because now we can use Cartesia effect, fuse Mirror Jade and also the Lubellion into the Dragostapelia. That's our second interruption, and then we have Quem to reborn the Jade, and yeah, then we have 3 interruptions and a ton of follow-up. If you take a look at this, we have Albion as follow-up and also Sprint, and if they're out Cartesia will also come back. We have opening to protect our board, we have Highspirits that will come back. So yeah, this is pretty good. It's 3 interruption and you gave 0 draws to the opponent. The last combo under Fuwa is with Brandon Highspirits and Albion, and this is a bit tricky. If he just makes Fuwa early, you can again give him 0 draws, but right here you don't really know that he has Fuwa, so you will activate Albion as usual, send Fall of Albaz, then discard with Highspirits the Albion, send a Titanic Lad, and get your Brigand's Kit. If you know that he has Fuwa, you will send here for sure Albion, but yeah, you don't know it, so you kind of go for the risky route, send Titanic Lad. Then you normal summon the Brigand's Kit, use the effect, and you search for Branded Fusion, then you shuffle 1 back, then you activate Branded Fusion, and now he will actually chain Fuwa. And so right here you have to give 1 draws, you send Koirese and Fallen of Albaz for Albion, and then you don't fuse again because you don't want to give another draw here. And yeah, then Koirese tribute Albion, and then go end phase. Albion effect, you will set the Branded in red because you have 3 Fallen of Albaz actually, so there's a lot of stuff to work with. And you also kind of have to activate the Titanic Lad and give another draw, because if you don't, you're losing on a lot of interruptions. So you activate Titanic Lad, special summon the Quem, and with Quem you will send the Cartesia to the graveyard. Then it is the opponent's turn, and you will activate Branded in red, targeting the Fallen of Albaz, add it to the hand, and then fuse the Koirese and the Fallen of Albaz into Albion. And then you will use Albion effect, banish the Albion in the graveyard and the other Albion in the graveyard into Mirror Jade, because one of them is considered to be a Fallen of Albaz. Then you can use the effect of Guiding Quem to reborn the Cartesia. Then Mirror Jade is your first interruption, you send the Rindbram. Then you would use Cartesia effect to fuse Brigand's Kit and herself into Grangunyol. Grangunyol sends Malong as another interruption, the second one. Then Grangunyol can also take himself out into Despian Corites, which is another interruption. It makes everything to 0. Then the Rindbram can reborn the Fallen of Albaz. Fallen of Albaz can fuse for Lubellion. And then the Lubellion effect can shuffle itself and also the banished Albion back to summon the Predapant Dragostapelia. And this is the 5th interruption, and if Mirror Jade gets outed, you can also pop the whole board in the end phase. So let's get to the Retaliating C part. This is actually twice the same hand. We were starting with Fusion Deployment and Aluber. And the most important thing against Retaliating C is to get it away from the field as fast as possible. So it also differentiates on where the opponent decides to drop the Retaliating C. For example, with this, if I start here with Fusion Deployment and the opponent wants to get as much value as he can out of the card, he probably will chain it to Fusion Deployment. And if he does that, he actually is in a huge problem because Fusion Deployment doesn't have cost. So if you decide to chain the Retaliating C so that everything gets banished to the Fusion Deployment, you can just decide to chain to change the target for summoning. You can just summon Fall of Albaz and then use Fall of Albaz effect, discard one card, and then fuse away the Ret C and the Fall of Albaz into Sprint the Iron Dash Dragon. Right, and then from here on you can just normal summon Aluber and then just do the combo as before if you just have the Branded Fusion one card combo with the Fallen of Albus in graveyard, right? So this is not as clever to chain it on here. So if we take a look at how this combo goes, it's like exactly the same if you have Fall of Albus one card combo and one Aluber one card combo and one Fall of Albus in the graveyard. So it's actually a lot of interruptions. If we take a look at this, it's yeah, it's I think 4 or 5 interruptions, and you nearly did not get hindered. So it's 4 interruptions with this board, and you did not nearly get hindered by the by the Retaliating C because of Sprint UI and Dash Dragon. But if he maybe thinks you do not play Sprint or whatever, then it's sometimes possible that he will chain it on the Fusion Deployment. Okay, same situation. You have Aluber and Fusion Deployment, but your opponent is a bit smarter and also expects you to play Sprint the and Dash Dragon, so he doesn't chain the Retaliating C here, so use just special Cartesia. Then normal Aluber get you Branded Fusion. Then you activate Branded Fusion, and right here he will chain the Ret C. And then you will go chaining 3 actually, so chaining 1 Brand Fusion, chaining 2 Ret C, and chaining 3 Cartesia to fuse the Cartesia and the Aluber into the Grangoniol, because you can now trigger also his effect because Ret C was summoned. Then you will fuse with Branded Fusion for Aluber and Tragedy, and Branded Fusion should be banished here. I will fix that later, but it should be banished. Then go into Lubellion, and now you have 3 effects that can trigger. You have Lubellion, you have Tragedy to search, and you have also Grangoniol to special summon something because the monster was summoned through the monster effect. So you will banish him for cost, then Tragedy will search you ad libitum. You can special summon the Guiding Quem, and you will fuse Fall of Albus and Rebellion into Chaos. Then you will go chaining 1 and 2 Quem to reborn the Cartesia, and Quem to send from the deck to the graveyard. You can activate that because it's not cost descending, even though Retaliating C is on the field. And chaining 3 is then Chaos Garsos. It's really important that Chaos is chaining 3 because you want to get rid of the Retaliating C before the Quem resolves. So now you pop with the Chaos, the C, then special summon the Cartesia, and then send Fall of Albus from the deck. And from here on, that's everything you have to pass. This doesn't look like much, but it's actually a lot of interruptions. And we will count that again. You will use Cartesia to fuse ad libitum and Chaos into the Predator and Darkostapelia. Then you will use Quem and ad libitum. Ad libitum will reborn from the banished pile the Grangoniol, and Quem will reborn the Albus. And now you can fuse with Albus and, for example, a dark monster into Lubellion. Then Lubellion effect and Albus can fuse into the Mirror Jade, and Mirror Jade and Dragostapelia are both interruptions, 1 and 2. You can send the Sprint to get back the Branded Fusion from the banished pile with the Spriggan's Kitten later, and then you can also use the effect of Grangoniol again. Right here you will summon the Thespian Quirites, and Quirites will be able to get everything to 0. And yeah, in the end phase, you will have Sprint to get your Springer's Kit to get in the next turn the Branded Fusion back. And so this is actually like 4 interruptions. Also, if Mirror Jade gets outed, he will also pop the board in the end phase. So this is actually a lot, even through Retaliating C. Alright, thank you so much for watching this big and giant video, this deck guide for Branded. I really love Branded. This is why I try to invest a lot of time and give you the best thing I could. And yeah, it's super long. If you watched until here, I'm super grateful. Thank you a lot. And also give me your opinion in the comments, what you think about the video, and what you think maybe I could have done better, or what you like about the video. This would help me, just interaction for the algorithm, right? And also subscribing to the channel would also help me a lot too, so I could give you a lot more Genesis videos in the future. And yeah, just saying it again, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next content that will actually come in the future. Bye bye.